It is the fracture of her first rib.
Because it looks like these otters are fixing to have relations right
Still
next
have
to
the
that
power
dam.
to soothe
And how
myself,
on
but the irrepressible power of
You wake up alive. You wake up alive. You wake up alive. So long, feel my wings sometimes.
500 words or less. Tell a complete story. Sometimes have a twist ending. The rules of flash fiction are simple but challenging, and have drawn a group of writers to the Little Falls Public Library each week to share their work. They add one additional rule. The word of the week must be used someplace in the story. Flashcast is a showcase of their work, and each episode will feature stories inspired from the word of the week. The content that arises is astounding, the talent superb, and the creativity infectious. These stories are streaks of lightning, charged, compressed, and certain to entertain. Welcome to Flashcast.
Predator's Fortune. The two elder sisters entered the meadow first, ears twitching, eyes alert to any movement. The yearling stepped out next, imitating his grown sisters. They had crossed a bobcat spoor on the way, but even the yearling could outrun it now, and his sisters made certain there was no chance of an ambush. The matriarch emerged from the woods last, not because she relied on her children, but to see for herself that they knew what they needed to do. They were all vulnerable in the open, but that was where the good grass was. Danger was always present, and some predators you couldn't outrun. Meadows just like this one held the bones of countless of her kind, the young and the swift, the old and weary. It made no difference. Had they ignored a warning? Been too interested in the new grass to keep lookout? Too tired to run? Any of those things could kill, as surely as a coyote stumbling over a fawn whose stillness, camouflage, and lack of scent had not been enough to counter a predator's good fortune. She had lost the child before this one, just that way. Nothing for it then but to accept it, and nothing for it now but to remember. Even as the new grass began to show itself, traces of winter lingered. She watched her daughters break through the last crusts of snow with their sharp hooves, finding the tender shoots that had only begun to emerge from the warming ground. She had taught them well. Even the yearling, full of energy and curiosity, knew better than to wander far and kept within close sight, even though the time would soon come when he would make his own way. The matriarch idly pawed at a clump of grass half hidden in melting snow, but decided she wasn't hungry and left it for her children. When she looked up, she saw a shadow in the woods. It would have taken no more than a second to sound a warning, but she hesitated. The shadow looked familiar. Was it the patriarch? No, he was in the higher meadows with the rest of the herd. Her children would soon join them. She remembered the shadow. She had noticed it that winter, but kept her distance. Winter was different from spring. Food was sparse, the nights were cold, and the snow was soft, welcoming. In winter, it would have been easy to lie down and not get up. She had not. Perhaps simply because it would have been easy, and ease had never been part of her life, ever. Now, with the new grass coming, the sun warming, her children eager and ready for their world, now it was hard. The shadow, she knew, cared nothing for easy or hard, only for what had to be. She lowered her head in his direction, as if to feed one more time, but her muzzle came up empty. Very slowly and deliberately, she lay down. She did not get up.
Give me a break. It's supposed to be the time of year when the dirty snows of winter melt away, the salt and the grime that collected in our streets and in our lives over the past 4 or 5 months. The days get longer in spite of the fact we turn our clocks ahead an hour. The earth moves closer to the sun, and every normal human being under that sun wants to get outside to be closer to it. It is time for cabin fever to go away while we all anxiously await the most anticipated malady of all, spring fever. I'd like to know what the hell happened this year. I go away for the majority of the winter for 2 reasons. The first is because I don't enjoy being cold and housebound, and the second is because I'm lucky and I can. One would think when you plan to arrive back to central New York on the 16th of April that spring would be well established and in the midst of making great strides to green things up. Not only did I come home to all browns and grays, it snowed today. Isn't that just a fine howdy-do? There is not a touch of green anywhere. The wind is blowing like it's the middle of March, and I have been chilled to the bone since I stepped out of the car. Let me just add, 3 days ago I was in North Jersey, a mere 150 miles from here, and it was 83 degrees. How long have I lived in this polar vacuum or on the Polar Express? Too long. Since there was nothing that was going to lure me outside today, I decided I might as well spring into action in the house. This was really a no-brainer since we gutted the kitchen while we were away, and every single thing that belongs in my kitchen is currently in a bedroom. This is a huge inconvenience. And in order to put things away, I pretty much have to spring clean every single thing I touch. How ironic is that? I've only been home a day, and the weather has caused me to lose the spring in my step, which I had revitalized while basking in the warm southern clime and breathing the salty sea air. I remember while sowing my wild oats in college, we used to celebrate the end of winter with spring break. Now I find myself longing for winter to give me a break. As I take a break from cleaning to whine about my homecoming, I am looking out my new glass back door at the gray sky and the white flakes floating in the air, trying to keep in mind Alexander Pope's famous quote, that hope springs eternal in the human breast. I am eternally hoping in my heart the spring will spring before summer arrives.
All the Lonely People. Eleanor, with hunched shoulders, shuffled as she carried a brown paper bag that leaked juice from a smashed tomato. Then the sack split, freeing the eggs, bread, and rice in front of the church. She collapsed to her knees and burst into tears and frustration. Slowly she picked up the rice when she noticed the doors of the church. Tears welled in her eyes as she remembered the dream, as if it was yesterday. A grubby man with a shaggy beard, wearing the same clothes since spring, stared at the little boy. Uncomfortable with the man's presence, the boy ran back to his mother. The mother cautiously assessed the man as harmless at first, but thought differently as time went on, as the man continued to watch the boy. With increasing frustration and anger, she finally gathered up the picnic dishes, the Kool-Aid thermos, stuffed them in the hamper, and threw them in the back of the station wagon. Reaching across the picnic table for the prize, his dog tags dragged through the spilt ketchup as he dragged the abandoned hot dog. His eyes lit up in wonderment when he spotted another heavenly treat. Gently he picked up the precious find. The memories of this treasure brought tears to his eyes. How long it had been since he had tasted a marshmallow. A brunette stood at the corner, waiting with sullen face. Her red fringe of her panties could be seen through the slit of her tight, short skirt. She put on her best smile and bent forward, trying to create more cleavage than her push-up bra and her adolescent breasts could produce above the low-cut top as each expensive car went by. Pulling out her compact, she gently pressed fresh powder on the purple spot on her cheek that had been created by the diamond ring of a backhand. Her eyes were still red and swollen from the pain and tears. Another car cruised by. Awkwardly, she walked to the curb in her two high heels, just like the ones her Barbie doll wears. A dropout sat leaning against a tree with splayed legs and dirty ripped jeans, his arms too heavy to move, knuckles cut and bloody. The holes in his ked showed no socks, but dirty toes, while the white T-shirt had since turned gray, with yellow-stained armpits. His shaggy hair nearly covered his stoic eyes, but the crystal salt tear residue on his cheeks. A man in black entered a diner sideways to accommodate his rotund body and sat at his favorite table near the window, table number 5. At table number 2 sat Mr. Brown. At 4 sat Mr. Maddox. At 9, Mr. Fellner. Each tipped his hand or fork as Father Mackenzie as he passed by every evening. While stuffing his cheeks from the bread basket, Father Mackenzie couldn't swallow. He reached for his wine glass as his throat closed, Choking, his eyes became bulged and welled with tears. Where do they all come from?